Hello everybody. As you probably guessed, it's Aidan here. So I suffer from an extremely rare and aggressive bone wastage disease called mucopolysaccharide disease, or MPS for short. There are 7 different types, and I am type 4A, Morquio syndrome. Morquio is a rare metabolic disorder in which the body cannot process certain types of mucopolysaccharides, or long chains of sugar molecules, which the body uses as lubricants and shock absorbers. In individuals with MPS deficiency or malfunction of specific lymphosome enzymes lead to abnormal accumulation of certain complex carbohydrates in the arteries, skeleton, eyes, joints, ears, skin and teeth. I am just missing an enzyme which is essential in breaking down of keratan sulfate. Incompletely broken down, keratan sulfate remains stored inside parts of the cells called lysosomes. The lysosomes become swollen and disrupt cell function, causing progressive damage. This condition gives me many different health problems. In my bones and joints, I have severe pain. My lower spine affects the bones of the vertebrae and leads to curvature of the spine and back pain. My knees are deteriorating and I will need replaced. My ankles are collapsed and full of arthritis. My shoulders are painful. Both my hips have been replaced, and this happened in 2006. My wrists are loose and floppy as the tiny carpal bones fail to develop properly and cause laxity and loss of power in my hands and wrists. My eyes have clouding of the cornea, so bright lights hurt as clouding causes uneven reflection of light. My chest is also affected with the morquio. The breastbone continues to grow normally, but it is joined to the spine, so it is forced outwards in a rounded curve. Your lung capacity is restricted. My heart has a leaking valve. I have osteoporosis, which makes my bones fragile and prone to breaks, and I am riddled with arthritis. So I think that's enough problems. Do you know, I think that's a good list. For my condition, I am on multiple tablets to manage my pain, and I am constantly monitored closely with X-rays, heart scans, MRIs, lung function, etc. I also have a charity based in the UK, the Mucopolysaccharide Society, or MPS for short. The MPS Society was started by my mum and another parent from England whose child had MPS. At this time there was no internet or information out there, so they started the MPS Society so that there would be information for other people, as when I was first diagnosed at the age of 6 we were completely lost. And I was diagnosed through an X-ray as I was not developing normally as a child. We knew nothing, the doctors knew nothing. The only info we had was from a book from America which had 4 lines which basically said a horrific disease with a low life expectancy. I missed lots of schools. I went to Great Ormond Street Hospital and Manchester Children's Hospital for full checkovers. Back then it was a different time. If you were disabled back then, you were classed as mentally and physically disabled as one. There were no special classes or Paralympians to look up to. You were different, so you stood out. There was no inspirational people like Stephen Hawking to dispel the myth that disabilities have learning difficulties. You look at any James Bond film, they all have some form of disability as the baddie or problem. They always stand out from the normal, and that's seen as bad, which makes them disabled. Now with internet and the schools set up for disabled children, and there's a world of information, and I can speak to similar people with my condition all over the world, all from the comfort of sitting on my chair. By the time I reached 30, I had deteriorated so bad and fast, so bad that I was in a poor physical and mental state. I was on 2 crutches and a leg brace, and I felt like a burden on society and wasn't able to do the simple things that everyone else took for granted, like even just cooking a meal took it out of me completely. It's tough. You're going to all these appointments hearing nothing but bad news. There's no treatments available, and if they do try surgeries, there's no precedents, so there's no guarantees that any of the surgeries will work anyway. So when I was contacted by the MPS Society that there was a clinical trial started for my condition, I knew because of my poor health condition that I was willing to try anything and had nothing to lose. The only problem was that there was no clinical trial centre in Northern Ireland, so I had to fly to England for the treatment. I signed up to the trial and I chose London Royal Free Treatment Centre. It happened so fast as the trial had only opened up, and by the next week I had started travelling. As it was a new trial, I was the typical guinea pig, as they say, and it was explained that I could be travelling every week and getting the drug, or I might not be getting the drug, a placebo instead, or I might be getting nothing at all. I would fly in the Monday, get the infusion on a Tuesday, which consists of a needle into the vein, with the drug then being put into your system through a pump. Your OBS were maintained every 15 minutes, and it takes roughly over about 5.5 to 6 hours, so it was a very long day. Then back to the hotel in the evening, and then fly back home on a Wednesday. It was really hard at the start travelling with my poor health condition, as I needed help to get through all the airports. Sorry. You had to stay for 2 weeks for full assessments to be gathering data for the trial, which consists of different tests like heart, lung function, walks tests, and the stair climb test. There was no weeks off, and even over Christmas you would maybe fly in Boxing Day so that you'd be there for the hospital and the next day. I was one of the first in the world to get this drug, which had replaced the enzyme missing in my DNA. I started to notice after a few weeks little changes. I was putting on weight, which I had never done before, ever. I could taste salty water, which I thought was me probably just getting the placebo of saline, but this was a sign that I was actually receiving the drug. Before the trial, I was mostly housebound. The trial gave me a new lease of life, something to do, as I could not work at the time. It gave me a sense of belonging, a purpose in life. I felt part of society, and knowing that the data gathered would help to get the trial started for the children. When I started the trial, I was informed that there would be a new trial centre opening soon in Belfast City Hospital, and that I would not have to go to London every week. But due to the usual red tape and setting up of the unit, I flew for just over 2 years every week and only missed 2 infusions in this time. The MPS Society, the charity, it booked all the travel and accommodation arrangements, so it made it a lot easier for me, and all I had to do was get myself to the airport. Signing up to the trial, I did not know what to expect. As I said, my health was poor, but everyone I talked to about going on the trial were really positive and hopeful for me. When you spend most of your life hearing from doctors and healthcare professionals, all you hear is negatives. There was never any good news, always bad, so I never ever got my hopes up about the trial, as I was so used to negative comments and did not think that it would help or ever work for me. I was completely so wrong. Throughout the trial, you were getting positive results from the data. My lung function improved, I had better stamina, fitness, it eased my pains, my skin complexion improved, I lost my leg braces after a couple of weeks, and then after a couple of months I was down to 1 crutch. It was still hard to tell because I was still travelling to London back and forth, but there was hope where there was no hope before. People in my local town who knew me would come up to me and say, "You look so well, you were really wild looking before." "Why'd you not tell me I was wild looking?" They says, "Didn't want to upset you." So I was like, fair enough. And they were all wondering what had changed in my life. I explained that I was getting ERT, enzyme replacement therapy. Before the trial, I never went anywhere, as would have needed to ask someone to come with me to help me get about, so I was pretty isolated and did not want to ask for help because I've got my pride. Being on this clinical trial had nothing but positives for me. I had gained more independence, where I was able to travel to London by myself after a few months, and this helped my confidence, and as others were joining the trial, I made lots of friends, where we were able to share our experience, and it was great to meet people with the same condition. As a regular to the hospital every week, all the nurses and staff became friends, and I looked forward to seeing them. When I was over for my longer stays and the data gathering, we would all meet up and even go to the pub for a few drinks. All this has been massive on my health and well-being. I very rarely ever do I look forward to going to hospital. Then the new trial centre had opened in the City Hospital in Belfast, and it was time to say goodbye to London. The only problem with London was that we were getting treated in the cancer centre, as that's where the only beds were available and that's where all the pumps were. In London they also opened a clinical trial centre, but that was just before I was leaving for Belfast. This felt like I was having to start all over again, and I was wondering about what it was going to be like having to meet the new nurses and people. I thought it's not going to be like London. I was wrong again. It's a state-of-the-art unit, as it was on the video there that was shown earlier. It has big open rooms, nice pictures, TV. It was not what I was expecting. It's got reclining chairs, which are great. A kitchen, so you could even go and make your own lunch. It was far from clinical to what I'm usually expected in hospitals. A relaxed place with amazing staff, and nothing was too much bother. It made the transition from London a lot easier, and just as before, I look forward to my treatment and catching up with all the nurses. I was in the City Hospital every week for just over 4 years. It was an amazing time, and I enjoyed every week. Even when I left, I was still going back there visiting, and not many people can say that when attending hospital. It was not just me. As the trial got licensed and other mortgage sufferers started, they all too had the same worries and stresses about what it was going to be like. And I enjoyed going to the clinical trial. They too seen at the unit. Once they walked through the doors, they seen at the unit. The worries were all elevated, and they would come through the door and see the excellent unit and met the staff, and they have been nothing but positives from the experiences. Then after 4 years, it was time for getting my treatment at home. It's still the same and takes over 5 hours to complete. The treatment is supplied by healthcare at home, and as they were helping me with treatment in the City Hospital, it was a seamless transition to home, which helped greatly and saved on the travelling. How has being on a clinical trial changed my life? It has been massive, and I rave about being on a clinical trial. I am far more independent, more confident, more healthier, stronger, hopeful about the future, as I was really worried before the trial. It has slowed down the progression of the disease, and I look far healthier than ever before. As I said, I never went anywhere before, but that has all changed. I've been to Brazil, Austria, Germany through the charity. I have done talks about being on a clinical trial and doing talks here today also, either for the drug company or for the charity. I'm also an ambassador for the Clinical Trial Centre in Belfast City Hospital, and I'm a member of the peer group, which I'm really proud of. Being on a clinical trial has opened so many doors for me, and I dread to think how I would be now if I hadn't have been on a clinical trial. I have not had any operations since being on the trial. Without the drug, I would probably had several operations on my knees, wrists and spine. To me, being on a clinical trial did not just change my life. I really do believe it did save my life. It has been that important for me. To finish, I just want to thank you for this opportunity to speak at this great event, and it's great to see that the cross-border healthcare intervention, which will be a great positive link for the future.